Kalen DeBoer going to make it through this season for Alabama?
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
What else can I say? I'm gonna say yes. Um, I don't know what to make. I've given myself, 96 hours at this point to try and make something of Saturday. So at this point, all right, everyone's watched the replay 37 times. Everyone has heard everyone else's opinion. They've developed their own. You just showed the press conference footage. Not only did we hear from Kalen DeBoer, we heard from both coordinators in Tuscaloosa. I still don't know. And then I was texting some of my buddies. I mean, I got massive SEC group chats that are just up in flames right now. Hey, what could they do to change your mind this Saturday? Nothing. It's UL Monroe. Nor candidly could they do anything the next week against Wisconsin. Because if I believe that what we saw in week one is in them, it's in them. That means even if they go over the cliff the next 2 weeks, eventually they're going to have to go on the road again like they had to in Neyland the year before, like they had to in Norman, like they had to in Nashville, of all places, and like they did in Tallahassee the other day. And eventually they're going to face quality competition capable of making you quit if you're not strong enough willed. I don't know if they're strong enough willed. This is not, by the way, a definitive statement. I am saying I don't know intentionally because I went and watched them. I watched them scrimmage twice, once in the spring, once in the fall. I thought it looked like the best team in the country. I picked him to win the national championship. So clearly, either my eyes lied to me or we got such an outlier of a result in week one that everyone's confused. I just don't know how you watch that in week one and then wipe it from your memory. Fitz, like I'm telling you, even if they win the next 8 or 9 games, that'll still be in the back of my mind. Every time we break a Bama game down, LSU week, Auburn week, they could go to the SEC championship game for all I care, and everything looks righted like Ohio State post Michigan last year, and I'll still know somewhere in the back of my mind that result is baked into this team. It may seem like ancient history, but if you've ever exhibited those characteristics once, it can crop up again. So, I mean, nothing less than going on to win a championship would completely wipe that from my memory.
Yeah, and the sloppiness, the what looked like the lack of effort, it all felt so anti-Bama. So obviously that's going to be the story of the game. But are we not giving credit where credit is due? Like, is there a world that exists that Florida State should be the story, that Florida State is a good team?
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't. So the way you said it, I agree that not enough credit's being given to Florida State. But for them to be the story, I don't know if you can watch Alabama play the way they did and just say, well, FSU's the story. Now, if you want to do like we have a policy on my show, you talk winners first, regardless of the outcome. Then talk FSU. Like that, we did it Sunday night. We talked FSU. I think it's a miraculous turnaround. I don't care. I don't care if the opponent lied down and asked you to walk over their limp body. It's a big turnaround for them because if you were to have watched Saturday and you had both players wear potato sacks instead of uniforms, you would have thought the other team, you would have thought Bama was the one that was replacing coordinators, overturning their entire roster in pure desperation mode. You would have thought FSU was the one that was pretty established, ready to make a run this year. So that's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. I went down to FSU in spring. We sat down with Norvell, and I left there, Caroline, thinking to myself, boy, he said all the right things. And I'm sure he believes them. But he has no other choice but to believe that he made the right hires and the right roster moves. I was of the opinion that even if he did make all the right moves, it wasn't just going to take off overnight. It wasn't like the bonfire was just going to be ablaze overnight. And I thought it was a shame that they don't have Penn State schedule. They don't have 3 tune-up games, then a bye week, then their first big competition. They've got to face Bama, an angry, motivated Bama, a more talented Bama right out of the gate. And then they did that. So yeah, that's a massive story. It's just like Ohio State's the story to me over Arch Manning. But at the same time, if you talked Arch Manning for 6 months, or in this case, if you talked Bama for 6 months, I don't know how you look at the glaring result that's kind of antithetical to what everyone expected and not say, whoa, there's probably a 1A, 1B headline here.
Yeah, you just brought up the one man in America who I think is more grateful than anyone for that Bama results, and
Mm.
it's Arch Manning because it has become a little bit more of a distraction from what Texas did at Ohio State. And look, I always said it was unfair to expect Arch Manning in his first real start as Texas's starter to go on the road to the reigning national champions in one of the most difficult places to play in college football and expect him to look like a Heisman contender. But he was a far cry from a Heisman contender. What is your major takeaway from what we saw from Arch Manning and Texas on Saturday?
That it's not Xbox, it's real life. So I took a very, very bold tact on this whole Arch Mania thing over spring and summer. It got me a lot of heat in Texas for whatever reason. People kept asking about expectations. They'd ask, you could do Dallas radio, Houston radio, whatever. They'd ask, what are your expectations? And I said, I think he's going to be a pretty good to a really good player. And that always hit me back. Well, don't you know he's the Heisman favorite? And I'm like, well, you asked me what I thought, right? Are you trying to tell me what you think? Or are you asking me what I think? I think he's going to be a pretty good to really good player, because what I get sick to death of in sports in general, but especially college sports, because they are college age kids, it's still a developmental level of the sport. What I get sick to death of is you build these expectations. The player doesn't. Arch never made a prediction about himself. He never set the Heisman odds board himself. You make the prediction, it doesn't come true because it was way too inflated. And then instead of looking in the mirror as a sports writer or a commentator or whatnot and saying, I was dumb for overinflating what I expected from this kid, people tend to look at the kid and say, you're a bust. He's not a bust. Your prediction was a bust. He was just always going to be what he was going to be. Now, having said that, I was very disappointed in the overall performance. His accuracy is very poor. I thought he played hesitant, not scared. I saw some people say he played scared. He's not scared. He just played hesitant. It's first time seeing a lot of that stuff. You just mentioned it. It's not East Texas A&M that he was playing. It was Ohio State on the road. That's a really tough place to play. All that stuff. Having said that, his issues are fixable to me. I think Sark knows that. His tone was a lot more measured in his postgame than Texas fans were. I think they can get it corrected. I believe they'll get it corrected. I also believe you'll see a rapid scaling up in production because not everyone's Ohio State on the road, like you said. So I think it'll be okay. It's just good to get the expectation bubble in check earlier rather than later. And now you can actually go to work at truly evaluating Texas and Arch Manning instead of doing this whole, like, it's almost like you're hyping and promoting a pro wrestling event where the outcome is predetermined and it's entertainment, it's a showcase. It's sports. It's real life. That's how real sports work. It's not always aesthetically pleasing.
Especially in the modern college football climate where there's so much change constantly. You just have to be more accepting of the fact that things are going to look weird. Let's go to one of the other results that looked weird to some. Miami goes out and just out physicals Notre Dame. I think that was pretty surprising to a lot of people to see Notre Dame just sort of moved on the line of scrimmage a lot. Are we giving Mario Cristobal enough credit for what he's done to turn Miami around at this point?
I think so, actually, Fitz, because there's a healthy dose of criticism that's been dealt to him as recently as last year. They should have been a national championship contender last year. They weren't because, frankly, they hired poorly on the defensive side of the ball, and that side regressed a la LSU a year or two before that, where you've got a Heisman caliber quarterback and you got nothing on the other side. So he's showing up knowing I got to score 40 every week for us to have a shot. So I think he's gotten a lot of credit for recruiting. He deserves it. I think he's gotten a lot of credit for the intensity that they run that program with, appreciating Miami, trying to represent Miami the right way, the authentic way, and he deserves it because they have. All right, so now that was the criticism. To his credit, he went and hired a really, really high-level defensive coordinator out of Minnesota in Corey Heatherman. It looks like they also really overhauled through the portal the secondary, which was the big storyline to me, more so than Carson Beck. The big storyline to me with Miami, we talked about it for a month and a half, was I kept hearing out of Miami, just inside fall camp, hey, our secondary is going to be a strength. Not only is it not going to be a weakness, not only is it going to be a net neutral, it's going to be a strength because we went and got the right players. We paired them with the right coordinator. So you hear a lot. You hear a lot in fall camp. So I was willing to wait and see on that. Limited sample size, first time starting quarterback against Notre Dame. It looked good. Tackling looked worlds better. So I never had a doubt about Carson Beck. That was one of the most weird things. People just believing that guy forgot how to play football. If he was healed from injury, which he was going to be fine. They got half a dozen pass catchers to replace from last year's team, but like Carson Beck's good enough to make pass catchers. So they'll be fine there. They got a great offensive line. They got what should be a high level ground game. If anything, I thought they still left something on the table in the run game the other night. So I don't even think you saw Miami's floor at all. They were +2 turnovers winning that game close at home. So that thing goes either way. I still think the world of Notre Dame. I just think you saw two top 10 teams. Everyone believed that about Notre Dame. Maybe now it's validated a little bit more about Miami.
Michigan. It's the richest 18-year-old in America under center for them, and Bryce Underwood. Look, he looked solid in his debut with the Wolverines. Justin Haynes in his first game in a Michigan uniform, he made his presence known and in a big way. I feel like I've talked so much about in the Big Ten, it's Ohio State and it's Penn State. And maybe unfairly so, I'm ignoring Michigan. But what do you think their potential ceiling could be?
I think it's lower than that of the teams you just listed. So I think you're right in talking about it like that. I've spoken about it like that. Some combination of Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, little drop off. I think Michigan may have their own tier. Then there's this other drop off. The whole tier 2, tier 3 conversation in the Big Ten is its own show, by the way, has been for a few years now. But I don't know that they have the horses at wide receiver. His leading receiver was a tight end, I think, the other day. It's New Mexico, whatever. They're going to go to Oklahoma this weekend. You're going to see a true freshman starter on the road against Brent Venables in Norman. So that ought to be fun. We're going to go to that game. But in the long run, I have believed, and I still believe, that what you'll do with Michigan this year is you'll watch them, and there'll be some wow moments, because that right there is a wow college football player you're looking at on the screen. But I also think there will be many outcomes where they're close, hard-fought losses, and you say, boy, they're just missing something. And that something is going to be skill at the wide receiver position. Kind of like a Penn State loss recently. You look at it and you say, that's a good-looking roster, good players. They're not a long way away. They just needed dynamic difference makers out wide. I don't know that I think that team doesn't have it. I'm going to say I don't know. I think that team doesn't have it. And so what it'll do is there'll be enough proof of performance from Bryce Underwood to where they can just go scorched earth in the portal. I think it'll be very, very quick turnaround in next year. Like I'm viewing this entire year through the prism of 2026. I think that'll be a national title contending type team in 2026 because I think receiver talent will see plenty enough to say, yeah, I want to go there.